Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about cellular respiration. Woohoo! Cellular respiration is a metabolic pathway that breaks down glucose into energy, also known as ATP. Glycolysis is the first topic of today, which is also the first step of cellular respiration. Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. So the first thing that happens is that a glucose molecule, which is a 6-carbon sugar molecule, goes in, while 2 pyruvates come out, which is a 3-carbon sugar molecule. In glycolysis, there are 2 phases, the energy investment phase and the energy payoff phase. Overall, glucose and 2 ATP go in, while 4 ATP come out, 2 pyruvate come out, and 2 NADHs come out. Glycolysis is anaerobic, meaning there is no oxygen involved. After glycolysis, the Krebs cycle is supposed to happen, but since pyruvate is too big to enter the mitochondria, it has to be converted into acetyl-CoA. The next step in cellular respiration is the citric acid cycle, which is also known as the Krebs cycle. This is aerobic, meaning it involves oxygen. Woohoo! The citric acid cycle, otherwise known as the Krebs cycle, occurs in the mitochondria. Acetyl-CoA is converted into different molecules, producing many other molecules as waste products. This cycle produces 2 ATP, 2 carbon dioxide molecules, as well as 8 NADH molecules and 2 FADH2 molecules. NADH and FADH2 are electron carriers for the next step. Then it also produces H2O molecule. The citric acid cycle is considered substrate-level phosphorylation. Overall, the acetyl-CoA goes in and produces 1 H2O molecule, 2 carbon dioxide molecules, 8 NADH molecules, 2 FADH2 molecules, and 2 ATPs.
The next step in cellular respiration is oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation takes place in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. NADH and FADH2 carry electrons from the citric acid cycle, where they jump from protein to protein, symbolized by the green marker. Besides transferring electrons, they also move hydrogen plus ions across the inner mitochondrial matrix. These hydrogen plus ions want to move back because there's a hydrogen gradient from high to low. Hydrogen ions also want to return because of the presence of oxygen, which is very electronegative. They come through ATP synthase, which is a protein. When hydrogen ions enter ATP synthase, it makes ATP synthase work. Near ATP synthase is ADP molecule in a phosphate group. Together, this produces ATP, around 32 to 34. The hydrogen gradient is considered the electron transport chain, while ATP synthase, powered by the hydrogen gradient, is called chemiosmosis. The hydrogen ions are first moved to the inner membrane space, then over here is the mitochondrial matrix. This whole thing is considered oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation starts with 8 NADH molecules and 2 FADH2. It makes 34 ATP. Oxidative phosphorylation is aerobic because of the presence of oxygen. Woo! Fermentation is another way to make energy. However, it has no oxygen, making it anaerobic. Fermentation only makes 2 ATP, contrasted with cellular respiration, which makes about 36 ATP with oxygen. Fermentation is made up of glycolysis reactions that regenerate NAD+. There are 2 types of fermentation: lactic acid fermentation and ethanol fermentation, also known as alcoholic fermentation. We're going to start off with lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid begins with glucose, which is then turned into 2 pyruvate with an end product of 2 lactate. You have 2 NAD+, then turns into 2 NADH, and then 2 NADH, which turns into 2 NAD+, which then happens vice versa and it regenerates. You have 2 ADP, which turns into a net release of 2 ATP. That is a glycolysis reaction, and this is the NADH regeneration. Lactic acid fermentation happens in muscles. What happens is when you work out, you produce lactate, which makes you really tired and sore. In alcoholic fermentation, you start off with one glucose molecule. That is then converted into two pyruvate molecules and then two acetaldehyde molecules, which also makes two carbon dioxide molecules. Then finally, you get your two ethanol molecules. You make two NADH to two NAD+, and then two NAD+ to two NADH, and vice versa. It regenerates like that. You also have two ADP, which make a net of two ATP. That is glycolysis, and that is NADH regeneration. Alcoholic fermentation mainly takes place in brewing beer and yeast. We're now going to talk about fermentation versus
cellular respiration.
Fermentation has glycolysis reaction that use 2 ATP and NAD+. There are two types, lactic acid and alcohol. Fermentation is anaerobic.
Cellular respiration is glycolysis, which takes place in the cytoplasm. This makes 2 ATP, 2 NADH, 2 pyruvates, and in the Krebs cycle, which is aerobic, it makes 2 ATP, 2 carbon dioxide, 8 NADH, and 2 FADH2, which takes place in the mitochondria.
Next in the mitochondria is oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation includes the electron transport chain as well as chemiosmosis. This makes 32 to 34 ATP as well as water.
Cellular respiration produces 36 to 38 ATP,
while fermentation produces 2 ATP.
The end! Thanks for watching!